I'm going to talk about the warrior and the man of wisdom. The warrior and the man of wisdom are archetypes. Archetypes are universal forms that arise out of every culture. They're a combination of our genetic endowment, the way that humans form social groups, and something else, something special. Carl Jung was the man who popularized the concept of archetypes, that there's epic stories and funny stories and romantic stories and characters that inhabit those stories that arise out of every culture. The archetype of the Divine Mother, the archetype of the sex goddess, the archetype of the wise king, the archetype of the joyful young man called the puer, or of the wise old man called the synex by Jung. And these archetypes come from human experience, and so they're very different for the feminine and for the masculine, mostly for men and women. And there's central archetypes that are very, very important to men and to women. The archetype of the ingenue, of the divine feminine innocent, of the Divine Mother, Hestia in Roman mythology, of the goddess huntress, Athena. And for the masculine, there's the archetypes of the epic hero, there's the archetypes of the warrior and the man of wisdom. Now, why are these important? They're important because there is a part of us that feels as we grow that we need to be true to the ancient voices. That's what religions teach us, that's what our mythological traditions teach us. And if you're a masculine person, you want to feel true to the part of you that would die for your principles. The part of you that would put the collective ahead of your own desires. The part of you that would stand firm in the face of adversity. These are all archetypes of the warrior. Because men are driven partly by testosterone, testosterone is a competition neurotransmitter. It's an aggression neurotransmitter. It's a sexual neurotransmitter. And as young men, as boys become adolescents, they want to find their position in the tribe. And that's a social position, and often they find it in conflict with other men. And that's joyful conflict. Yes, it's aggressive and so on, but out of that conflict comes a sense of meaning. When I was a boy, I was fascinated by the coming-of-age stories, by the Aborigine walkabout, by the young men who would go to war and discover themselves, by the warriors who trained in the samurai tradition and in the European tradition. And I studied martial arts. I studied Shotokan karate, and I wrestled, and I played tennis, which is sword fighting at a distance. And I studied fencing and swords and so on. And I put myself through ordeal after ordeal after ordeal after ordeal, as many young men do. And it was very frightening, but it was also exhilarating. And I wanted to find something. At first, I thought I wanted to find power. And often the young warrior wants his own power. But gradually, I began to see that power in service of self is just selfishness. I saw that at tournaments with the guys who didn't pay attention to other guys and hit them. I saw it with the athletes who were self-absorbed and narcissistic. I saw that power in service of caring for other people was beautiful. I saw that the people who cared about their teams and cared about other people and would stand against injustice. And so I learned the way of the warrior. I learned that archetype, and I practiced it, and I incorporated it into psychotherapy, and I taught it to men and women, because there's many women that want to learn the way of the warrior. There's a feminine equivalent of this. Well, about 9 years ago, my son, who was then 17, and I went to do ceremony with a shaman friend of ours named Jade Wahoo out in the middle of the desert in Arizona near the Green River. And this was a very strange time because I had injured myself grievously and couldn't engage in extreme activities anymore, as my son had always known me to be throughout his life. He had to take care of me. He had to drive. He had to carry things for me. I felt old. And we went and we did ceremony, and in this group of men, it was very, very interesting. There were young men. Ethan was the youngest. He was 17. There were men in their early 20s, and there were older guys. in our 50s or 60s. One night we were sitting around the campfire, the stars just covering the sky, magnificent, the desert sky, fire burning, all of us feeling good about each other, enjoying the company. And Jade Wahoo said, when you're a young man, when you're a young warrior, you need to plunge yourself out into the world. You need to take risks. You need to love hard, and you need to strive. And when you meet an ordeal, move into your ordeal. And seek out the things that excite you, and seek out the opponents that you want to do battle with, and do battle with them. He says, as that happens, you'll discover your path. You'll discover your way. You'll discover what excites you and repels you. You will develop your consciousness, your knowledge, your identity as a warrior. He said, but then there'll come a time when you don't want to strive with other people. The old guys and I, we were all looking at each other. There'll come a time when you're interested in good decisions rather than in plunging impulsively into the world. We'd all just been telling stories about some of the worst things that we did when we were, it was funny, the old guys talking about mistakes they made. Tens of thousands of dollars lost, cars wrecked, there was a police car that got burned up, police, the law, relationship disasters. And all these guys, this was hard-earned wisdom that we were discussing, laughing, telling stories. He said, you reach a time where you feel that you want to share your love with the world. You want to share the wisdom that you've encountered. You want to put that out into the world. You don't want to strive as much anymore. You want to give. Just as the samurais in their 40s and 50s sometimes would give up being a samurai, a warrior, and go be a Buddhist monk. Just as Erik Erikson, the famous developmental psychologist, in one of his final stages, the final stage of his psychosocial stages of development was generativity, when people wanted to give back. That's the man of wisdom stage. And that man of wisdom has access to the wisdom of the world. Wisdom of the world exists around us in knowledge systems. I believe it's fields of wisdom, fields of understanding, fields of knowledge that we access as we begin to surrender to them, understand them, strive to know them better. And then those fields come through us into the world, in service of other people, ultimately in service of evolution. That evolutionary impulse coming through us expressed in our desire to serve each other, expressed in our desire to stand up for what's right. I've had the privilege of initiating many young men into the archetype of the warrior. Young men who were struggling, and I would encourage them to find their power and find the areas that they wanted to strive, and to strive in those areas, to discover that power, and to explore what it's like to do it just for yourself, and then do it in service of other people. And they always discovered that in service of other people it was better. It became more pure and more beautiful. And I've had the privilege of working with men who had felt tired of striving with the world and going for success and going for that next thing, and wanted to give back somehow, and felt like they had something profound to offer. And I would always say, yes, you do. You find that deep love and wisdom in you, and you find where you want to give it, and you give it. And as you do that, you'll feel God's pleasure. And that's the archetype of the man of wisdom. The warrior and the man of wisdom. Two archetypes that guide us as men. They guide us to make good choices. They guide us to find the people that will resonate with us in our own epic journey, our own archetypal quest for meaning throughout this life, where we're the center of this universe, and the universe takes meaning depending upon how we live it. And if you're a masculine person, living it as the purest expression of the warrior, and allowing yourself to transition then into the man of wisdom, is a wonderful path. The warrior and the man of wisdom.